How you doing?
I'm doing great, my brother. How you feeling?
Doing good. It's Tony Penn, owner of Penn Restaurant Group, co-founder of Results Driven Leadership with my good bro, Chef Aaron Sanchez, one of the leaders in the Latin culinary community, as well as judge on Master Chef, is where most of you know him. So, but yeah, I just thought we'd take this time and talk about a few things going on out there in the world that are important to both of us. And I couldn't think of anybody better that I'd like to bring on to talk about it than you, because I know you're out there and I know you're working with a lot of different groups trying to help the cause. And so I wanted to be able to share some thoughts with you and talk about old times, but not too many old times, because this is G-rated. Okay. So yeah, you and I have been through a lot. We've traveled the world together. We've seen some crazy shit in our day, but we've never seen anything like this. This is probably unprecedented, and there's been no blueprint on how to deal with it. We all just kind of got thrown in it, everybody in the world, and not everybody's 100% sure how to react to it. But I do think that in these difficult times, it's, intelligent people and more importantly, caring people seem to step up and want to do what they can to help the situation. And that's what made me think of you, because you've always been that guy. No matter where we've gone and what we've done together, you've always been there for other people. And so that's why, that's why I thought of you. So we'll start with, how's life in quarantine? Where are you, by the way? I mean, I know where you are, but tell everybody else where you are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm here in northern LA, I guess where I'm at. And, I initially came out here with the idea of spending about a month actually filming Master Chef, the new season. And as we started, embarking on this journey with all these future hopeful chefs, we started to get wind of how this was starting to, the pandemic was starting to reach at home. And we were very optimistic that we could have finished in concluding the actual shooting of the show. We got through about halfway of it. And then, for obvious reasons, things were shut down. So I took the opportunity, if there's anything as an opportunity, but to spend time with my son, who lives out here with his mama, spend time with you, people that I really care about, and have a moment just to kind of step back and really take a look at what's going on. And as I started to settle in a little bit and cook and do things that were very natural and innate to me, I started figuring out, okay, how can I help people here on the ground? Because you've never met more of a generous person than a restaurant person like yourself or a chef. We're constantly donating our time and our talents to help others in need. And this was definitely the time to do it. So I wanted to make sure that I got a good grasp on the safety situation before I started putting myself out there. And then when I felt comfortable about it, we started taking action.
Well, good. And obviously getting to spend more time with Yuma's, your son, has been a blessing. You do travel a lot, and obviously you live in Orleans, so it's difficult. I know you spend a lot of time out here, but I'm glad you're able to spend some time with him. But kind of talking a little bit more about what you're doing right now. I know you're working with the farm workers. What specifically are you doing to try to help them right now?
Yeah, well, I think what you and I will get to the IRC a little bit, but yeah. One of the things that's important is that, yes, the restaurant industry employs 11 million people, but a lot of the people that are affected by this are the people that have a direct contact and business relationship with the restaurant world. Yep. And one of them, one of the primary sources are our farm workers that are actually have not stopped since this pandemic started to make sure that we have food that we can cook and sustain ourselves and bring some sort of joy. So Obviously, I'm a huge proponent for the Latin community, whether it's my scholarship or whether it's helping people in the fields. And I have some dear friends here in LA, San Juan from Gloria's Restaurant, who has a really good, a good sort of outlet to those people, to that workforce. And we started figuring out where can we attack this and how can we just bring meals and sustenance to these hardworking people and let them know that we're thinking of them.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, when you think about people that aren't in the restaurant industry don't understand. You know, when you think about just on the restaurant side, $800+ billion comes in for revenue into the restaurant industry, and 90% of that goes to employees, you know, vendors and rent. I think the silent heroes that don't really get, you know, much recognition in this catastrophe are the people that are out there on the front lines still working. It's the people that are working the front lines and working in the fields and trying to get the product to the suppliers to get to the rest of us, you know, don't get a lot of recognition. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. And you're right. Cause it's like, you think about it, look, you know, the restaurant industry employs more people than any other apparatus other than the federal government. That's a statement right there, right? And then think about all the people that are indirectly or directly involved with the restaurant industry, from the winemakers to farmers to the people that, you know, do all the IT and the tech. I mean, it's vast, the landscape of people that are associated directly or indirectly with the restaurants.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk a little bit about that world and what we can do to help that. Yeah, there was another question I wanted to ask you too, which was, you know, what other, I know you're doing so many things, what other inspirational things and projects are you working on?
You know, right now I partner with the Lee's Initiative. There's a good friend of mine named Chef Edward Lee. He's out of Louisville. He has this great movement going on called Lee's Initiative. And basically what he's done is he's partnered with chefs all over the country to open up their kitchens and provide warm packed meals for restaurant employees. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's been a huge undertaking. Obviously he's doing this and using his connections with peers and colleagues like myself to open up kitchens. I'm not personally doing that in New Orleans just because I'm not there to shepherd that. But what I am doing is I am being a face and a voice for that Latin community of restaurant workers that for whatever reason might feel intimidated or scared to go to these very public places to get warm meals. Right. And if that's a legal situation or, you know, their citizenship status or whatever that is. So really what I want to do is be able to tell that huge portion of our restaurant family that it's okay to go to these Lee's Initiative approved outlets to get warm meals for you and your families.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I know there was another initiative that you were working on too in New Orleans at your restaurant where you guys were cooking food and giving it out to the community, asking for donations. Mm-hmm. What's that one about? Yeah,
we started to identify. Well, I mean, we're doing it in many different layers, but we did a whole push to help the police and firemen and local city employees with food, and then now we're also involving the veterans community in New Orleans, which is huge, to make sure that they're also fed as well. And by the way, we are still open during this time, doing the takeout and doing the necessary things that we can just to stay afloat.
Right.
Now, I hope everyone knows this out there that's going to be watching and listening, is that we're in dire straits. This is survival mode. Right. So chefs are out there and restaurateurs are doing whatever is necessary to generate income to keep, first of all, A, to keep our employees with a livelihood, and B, to help make sure that we're putting something aside for this hopeful reopening of our businesses.
Right. And I mean, you brought it up, you know, we both kind of are working with and supporting the IRC, the Independent Restaurant Coalition, which is our voice on Capitol Hill, where you know, there's someone that represents the restaurants and that has experience dealing with Congress. And because there's just there's a lack of understanding of how restaurants work, how the financials work, how the employee systems work. And so their initial, while they did try, and they made an attempt, but they came far short with regard to helping those of us in the restaurant industry. The PPP doesn't apply. We're seeing all kinds of issues now where the smaller independent restaurants are kind of being left out of the initial phase of money being distributed, and then the specific timelines don't work because restaurants won't be up in time to be able to take advantage of that 8-week period to get their employees back on. So there's a lot being done to try to help the cause. And what are you seeing out there, and what's the message? Because go ahead, because
no, I know, but you and I spoke about this yesterday, actually. You know, the stimulus packages work if you have a hair salon with 5 employees and no perishable goods, and you know you're dealing with a 2,000 square foot, 1,000 square foot storefront that has very little overhead. Okay, and so if you're in the government phase and way of looking at things, you can't put all small businesses in with restaurants. We have such a particular business model. We run at 10% margins at best. We need 3 months of operating capital in the bank to be able to purchase ingredients, make sure our insurance is correct, making sure that we're making payroll, etc. So you need people on Capitol Hill like the IRC who have intimate knowledge on the workings of how a restaurant sustains itself. And I think that's where we've fallen short a little bit. You need that voice of someone that has a very intimate knowledge in the way restaurants work. And then you know this better than anybody, Tony. I mean, you've been in this business, 40 years. It's like you're talking about quick service versus chain restaurants versus all these different layers of our industry that need to be treated specifically. Yeah. And that's the scary part of this whole how it's affecting the restaurant industry, because we need somebody there that's our voice that knows this intimately. I mean, you saw today, and I have to commend Danny Meyer for giving back his stimulus check for Shake Shack. I mean, it says a lot. Yeah. And just to show you how people are sensitive to this right now.
Well, and that it was quite a backlash. I don't think he realized it when Congress came out with the PPP. They were trying to be sensitive to people that had more than one restaurant and said, the 500 employees only applies if you have one restaurant with more than 500 employees. Which, I mean, who has one restaurant? So. Yeah. I understood that, but I don't think anybody realized, including Danny Meyer, that it was going to be he that got payment before anybody else, or before a large percentage of restaurants, and that's what caused the backlash. And hopefully.
And now you're hearing Potbelly, Ruth Chris, who have also gotten a substantial payout, who are, I think, under the gun now to make a right move. Personally, I don't think they have to necessarily give all of it back, but, be mindful of, everyone else in your community, in the restaurant community, that really absolutely need it.
Exactly. And you made a good point earlier where you said this is about survival mode. There's a lot of discussion about how we're going to build this thing once we get the green light. But right now it's how do we stay above water? Spending a lot of time with my clients working on cash flow projections. And part of that has to do with when is that PPP and when is that, EDIL going to hit?
Yeah.
And so, and we're taking all that information. We're going to all the vendors and saying, hey, this is what it looks like over the next 6 to 12 months. I need a break for 2 or 3 months. I can't do a deferment because I'm not going to have the money in 3 months to pay it back. So it's critical that tomorrow being the day when they decide the next phase, hopefully, of funding, that we're represented. And so I think what's going to end up happening is, there's going to be a significant amount of time before this ever goes down, before that money ever gets here. And so it's just about trying to figure out different ways to keep your head above water. I will say this, though, anybody that's listening, or anybody that knows anybody that's a friend of a restaurant, or, whatever the case may be, is that go on to saverestaurants.com.
Yep.
SAVE restaurants.com, and, sign up and get the petition out and let Congress know that there's a lot of people out there that are supporting this.
But think about how convoluted it is, Tony, though. So now you just said it. You're talking to vendors and giving them projections about what is an honest assessment of income that's going to be potentially flowing through your business, right? But now you're dealing with landlords who are independent business people that don't necessarily have to subscribe to federal mandates. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I need some rent abatement. I need all that love. And, I think we should talk about this next is, what are the phases of how the restaurants will open? There's talk about going 50% capacity, disposable menus, having servers and staff come approach you with masks and gloves. Right. But I'm still getting charged 100% of my rent space. Right. You know what I'm saying? And you want me to run at 50% capacity? Like, how is that just?
Right. And then how, at 50% capacity, how am I supposed to have 100% of my employees back? So explain that one. But one of the things that I am working with clients on is making sure you establish that relationship with your vendors, and you have a relationship. And if you take the time and plan and put together a projection worksheet, and you go to your landlord, for example, and say, hey, here's what it looks like. I'm negative cash flow at 25% of what I once was,
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I think it'll ramp up to. And so maybe when it ramps up to 50%, I'm paying 50% rent, or something where you guys can work on a deal. I just had a conversation yesterday with a landlord that has 100 restaurants. Nobody even asked him. He just waived April for everybody. Made it an abatement, didn't defer it. But he's dealing with the same thing that a lot of restaurateurs are dealing with. He's got to go to the banks that have mortgaged the property and say, hey, I need a break from you. And some banks are being understanding, and some aren't. I won't mention any names, Wells Fargo. So, but they're dealing with a lot of the same things. So don't think that the landlord is just sitting there free and clear, having that, be able to make those decisions that easily.
Yeah, and also, Tony, to couple that, now you're bringing up the idea, because of your point, now you're going to have transparency with an operator, restaurant operator, and a landlord. Right. And that necessarily doesn't always jive. No. So in order for that thought process to work, we're going to have every finance on the table. And then what's going to come into question is, are you managing your business efficiently, et cetera, et cetera? You know what I mean? So it's going to be a whole exercise in patience and dialogue and understanding.
And I will say this, because I've seen it happen a couple of times. That dialogue that you're talking about, it has to be open, transparent. But if I'm a landlord, I want to see the work that you're putting in. I want to see, what the plan looks like. What type of best practices are you using to try to build revenue? And if you're decided to stay closed, what's your plan after the veil is lifted? And if I see that, I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable about it. The other thing I think that's important here is these relationships that we're establishing now, that, to your point, that didn't exist in the past, they're going to create an environment that's going to be extremely beneficial as time goes on. So once we get out of this and you have that relationship, you know, with your vendors, including your landlord, that's going to be nothing but helpful to you going forward. So I've been telling everybody, get out there and start talking, just and be out there open and honest about it.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important.
The last thing I wanted to kind of touch on was, it's kind of in the same vein, but it's about fear and trying to figure out when we start to ramp up, you know, how we're going to address the fear that's going to be inherent in customers and in employees and yourself and everybody else. And, you know, one of the things that keeps coming up, and I wanted to get your take on it, is how important it is now for those that are in the cooking process and are behind the scenes, how important it is for them to be up front and out front, talking about what they're doing to ensure that that fear can be turned into assurance and confidence that it's being done in a sanitary manner, because this is the new world order. We don't have any choice, but we're in this.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
What's going on behind the scenes is people are starting to like take videos of their kitchen and you know, with people trying to clean, you know, showing them how to clean, showing them how they produce the food, you know, masks, gloves, what they're wearing, all of that having an effect on public perception and ensuring that whatever product they have going out has been done to the utmost highest standards, because people are going to be afraid. You know, you talk about, I just saw an article that Wuhan has like 11 million people were able to go back to their lives, but a lot of them weren't going out to eat. And a lot of these restaurants are still empty. And there's just a fear that's out there. And I don't think it's going to be anything like that here, but it's going to be a slow roll. And if you want to have any type of advantage, you got to be out front and you got to be showing people that you're doing everything you can.
Yeah, I think the days of serving food without any gloves is over.
Yeah.
I think regardless, I think people are going to be so hypersensitive to those sorts of practices when it comes to executing food and how it's viewed. And I think that's a good thing. I think we've been too lax, to be honest. And I think I'm all for it. You know, I mean, I run my restaurants like a tip-top shape Navy vessel. You know, I'm extremely particular about that. But this is called to light other restaurants and other operations that maybe don't have that sort of intensity.
Yeah, well, they're not going to survive, I can tell you right now, because you know, the world has gone through a complete metamorphosis in that regard, and safety and sanitation is now going to be ranked right up there with service and food quality. So it's, whereas number 3 in the past, you know, it is going to be number 1 or 1A. I can tell you right now, and you better be ahead of it, which is what I'm trying to advise people that I know.
And I wouldn't be surprised if there's from a state level a mandate that requires food, like a food handler certificate, like you get if you're a chef, where you're gonna have to come back and be retrained on safety food practices. I mean, I really see that happening, and I'm for it.
Yeah. Again, if you can take the bits and pieces of what valuable is going to come from this experience, that's one of them, where I think restaurants are going to be a lot cleaner and people are going to be more mindful of how they go about do their business from a safety and sanitation standpoint. So, all right, dude, appreciate the time and thanks. And I just want to remind everybody again that saverestaurants.com, you're talking the independent restaurant world is 4% of the GDP.
Yep.
So trillions. If something happens to this industry, the economy is going to suffer. And I just, you know, I think a lot of people know that, but a lot of people don't really understand it. So
yeah, and let's reiterate, restaurant business is the second biggest employer other than the federal government. Okay, 11 million employees, let alone the tens of millions that are indirectly involved or directly involved with the restaurant industry. We run at 10% margins. We need more than 8 weeks is not enough of capital to get us right. You know what I mean? This is serious business. This is all I've ever known. It's all you've ever known. And it's like, this is serious time. I mean, we're selling crawfish, you know, out of our restaurant. We're making burgers. We're doing anything to keep ourselves afloat that doesn't necessarily have to deal with the Mexican vernacular. That's where we're at. You know what I mean?
And what you're doing, I'm seeing out there a lot. Anybody there, you know, people that are out there asking their customer, what do you want? You know, I'm working with this Asian fusion guy, and he's like making pizzas because that's what people wanted, you know, for a particular week. So it's,
I know, but this is another question too, so I'm sorry to cut you off, but you know, it brings up a very contentious point where we have our DoorDashes, our Caviar, Uber Eats, and then there's a thought process. Do you call the restaurants directly and do curbside, because the restaurant will be reaping more of the profit and the benefit of that financially? And you know, we won't be surviving without all these apparatuses in place, like the DoorDashes and the Uber Eats. So we're very grateful. But it's just like, you know, you as a consumer, you know, trust your heart and do the right thing, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and you know, the DoorDashes and Grubhubs of the world, you know, have to also understand that margins are 10%, and that they have to be able to kind of allow some leniency in what they charge restaurants. But I tell you what, I've seen some incredible things going up. I've seen restaurants that have turned into markets and grocery stores, selling everything from toilet paper and dairy products and sanitary products, because you know, their Cisco's of the world and their large distributors had all this product on hand the whole time grocery stores were out, because they didn't market to those people. So I'm seeing a lot of that, and I'm seeing a lot of makeshift curbside drive-throughs where people just drive up and somebody runs out with gloves and a mask and hands them a bag of food. You know, anything and everything to stay alive. Through this, and that's what you're seeing out there. And you're seeing a lot of resiliency, and I'm seeing a lot of innovation, I think. And I keep telling them, I know it's not going to change anytime soon. So even if people are allowed back in your restaurant, now you become proficient at this, and you're probably going to want to keep doing it for a long time. With no test, no vaccine, it's a slow roll, my friend.
Yeah, I hear you, my brother.
All right.
Well, you know what? I appreciate you, man. I love you. I got so much respect for you. You and I have opened up restaurants, many. We know each other for a long time, my brother.
And you're doing a lot of good out there, and keep it up, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right, my man.
Good, man.